Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Rebuilding from the wildfire. We'll hear from the regional district for the North Shuswap about the difficult road ahead after significant loss of structures. And fans of Drake had to just hold on and go home last night after his concert was canceled at the last minute. Many had spent thousands and traveled from far and wide. How far would you go to see your favorite artist? After 12:30, with back to school right around the corner, how big a problem is the teacher shortage in BC? I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1 and live streaming on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. Well, there has been, quote, a massive amount of damage in the North Shuswap due to the Bush Creek East wildfire. Fire damage to hydro lines was extensive, and the power is still out for more than 3,000 homes and businesses. Susan Edgell is an advisor for BC Hydro, and here she is describing the extent of downed power lines and the work to get power back up and running.
22 kilometers of power line. That's no joke. That's a lot of square footage. 430 poles were damaged. That doesn't include 52 pieces of infrastructure from hydro that was also damaged. So right now, that is the sort of the most important thing that we're doing. We have a staging area near the Little Shuswap where all of the infrastructure is being housed, the poles, the wires, all of the things that we need to re-electrify. We right now have got 50 poles in the ground to date. We've dug 130 holes, so it's just about keeping that momentum going. There is no sort of sense of priority with which community. It's more about the critical infrastructure that we're trying to make gains on. For example, in Scotch Creek, the medical office, the pharmacy, that's about 80% done right now. We're not quite there, but critical infrastructure is the first thing. But without poles in the ground, we can't electrify anything. So priority right now is just building that line back up.
Edgell says that could take weeks to get the power back up. And she adds, residents who have been evacuated for more than 5 days will receive a credit on their hydro bill. Now, the Bush Creek East fire destroyed or damaged nearly 170 properties. And Tim Conrad is an information officer with the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Emergency Operations Center. And he joins me now. Tim, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What more can you tell us about the extent of damage due to the fire?
We continue to learn more. We're gaining that situational awareness each and every day. As you know, 131 structures lost, 37 partially damaged. We may find more yet and add to that count in some areas that we've been unable to access so far. We know, of course, what you just mentioned, the BC Hydro lines is a big part of things right now as they work on that. It's a staggering number of poles that need to be replaced and the equipment on them and the time that it will take to do that. So we do know that some residents are starting to see their power come back on and thinking that, oh, that's good, I can maybe get back soon. But we still have active fire in many parts of the fire right now that we're dealing with. And just lots of damage, even road damage and so on that we're also working around and trying to figure out what we're working with. So.
Right, and we heard from BC Wildfire yesterday describing, burned hydro poles and downed power lines that he could see. For yourself, Tim, what's your own reaction to what you've seen so far?
Well, it's I've been shocked of every moment that I see. If you may have seen my face or heard my name before, I do this work quite a bit and done a number of disasters across Canada, and it's this is definitely one of the worst that I've been part of, the impact is very significant to the land and to the people, and it's going to take some time to recover, but we will get there, and we will get along that path, and we're working towards that as quick as we can. So.
What is the task before you right now? Is it that critical infrastructure that Susan Edgell was talking about?
Yeah, I want people to be assured that we're doing everything possible that we can for those that can return home, that we want to get you home as soon as we can. We don't want you out of your homes any longer than what we need to. So we're working hard towards that and trying to get all those pieces in place so that you can get back to your homes. For those people that have lost their homes, we're working with them. We're contacting them through these days right now to make
Mm,
sure that they're aware that they've lost the structure. So there's individual calls going out to every single person that's been impacted, both the total structure loss as well as the partial, and having a phone call with them to go through things and
yeah.
start to uh, get them on that path to recovery. So these are tough days here, and they're tough days for the people that are impacted. So and we're going to require a lot more patience still as we work our way through these next days.
We sure feel for everyone there who has been impacted. Those calls started going out yesterday to residents. What were those calls like, and what are the next steps for them?
Yeah, we did just get started late yesterday, so and it's obviously it's emotional work. It's these are tough conversations to
Yeah.
have, and I think people are also they're being very just very good with the where they're at right now, and
Mm,
so um, it's a very difficult spot to be. It's the worst of news that you could receive in perspective of your life, and so
yeah.
it's a tough thing, and we are continuing to work to align resources to help them through this process, and
Okay.
it comes down to a lot of simple things right now. So waste from the sites, things like that, cleaning up. Is a big part of that. So we're getting resources lined up that will be able to handle that as we're able to allow people into areas.
Logistically, I know that one of the problems is food that has gone bad because fridges have not been working, freezers have not been working. How big a problem is that right now?
Yeah, it's certainly a problem that the wildfire crews and fire crews have noticed. There's a lot more wildlife. They move ahead of the fire and they to run away from it, just like everybody else. And so they have moved into these areas which are safe to them now. And unfortunately, without the power, their noses are quite sensitive to those things and
Hmm.
they're are picking up on it. So there's certainly we've heard a number of reports of many different types of animals being seen. So we are trying to get things in rolling, and so that process started. We do have bins in place. We'll have some more information going out this afternoon that will help
Okay.
people to understand that next step, and then there's going to be further information in the coming days.
Okay, looking forward to that update then. And it's a big job and a long task ahead. What about school that is scheduled to start next week? What can we expect?
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to add on the schools. We are in discussions with the school district and they're working on their plans. I'd have to leave that up to them, but I know
Okay.
that they work hard towards getting students back into their school if at all possible, and getting them as much normalcy to the children's lives as they can. And that's a really
Yeah.
important piece.
Absolutely. The toll on people's mental health as a result of this as well. Where should people go for
Mhm.
the latest updates, Tim?
Yes, you can go to any of the Columbia Shuswap Regional District web pages, Facebook accounts, as well as the Shuswap Emergency Program Facebook accounts and websites. So I'll just give you one to start, the csrd.bc.ca, and then you can go and search for us on Facebook. So the Shuswap Emergency Program and the Columbia Shuswap Regional District Facebook page and our YouTube page. So just a note while I'm talking to people, our media briefing that we do, and I know lots of the public watches that we've moved it to 1 p.m. today just to accommodate a schedule change that happened. So certainly jump on and catch us on 1 p.m. on YouTube.
You're right. People do watch out for that. So that's coming up at 1 p.m. on the Shuswap Emergency Program YouTube page, rather. Tim, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Appreciate your time. I know it's a busy day for you. Tim Conrad is an information officer with the Emergency Operations Center for the Columbia Shuswap Regional District. And again, for up-to-date information, you can go to their website as one of the locations to go to, csrd.bc.ca. 12:16 now, 1:16 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today here on CBC Radio 1. Live streaming as well. We're online at cbc.ca/BC. You can find us on YouTube as well. Just search CBC Vancouver, and you can use the CBC Gem app. Very nice to be with you. Well, thousands of concert goers were disappointed last night after Drake's opening night at Rogers Arena was suddenly postponed, and this was due to a technical glitch at the venue. Now, many fans had traveled from out of town to see the Toronto rapper perform at Rogers Arena. And before the cancellation, we took to the streets to speak with those excited Drake fans before they got the news. And here's what they had to say.
A huge Drake fan since I listened to his first album, So Far Gone. Oh my goodness. I am the biggest Drake fan. So I had to convince these two to get tickets when they first came out. And I think when they dropped, they were like 1,000 and we were considering it. But then they went down to 550. We're like, we have to buy it because it's worth the experience.
I feel like he's very nostalgic, and his music style is really nice because he got all different type of vibes that you can listen to.
It's good vibes. It's just going crazy. Yeah. Get a little turn. Even though we have seats, we're gonna be jumping up and down. I know that for a fact. So.
Great music. I can't lie.
Energy and charisma as well. His music, energy, charisma. We've seen on social media about his other performances and how he brings out other people, and it's just the energy is amazing. So we had to be involved because we weren't. We actually came from Calgary for this concert. So it was a little once-in-a-lifetime experience for us.
It's amazing. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for my daughter, so it just brings us another bonding moment together.
Oh, you almost feel very bad for them as you watch those clips because, of course, after the scheduling change was announced, many of those out-of-town fans were devastated, many unable to stay in Vancouver until Wednesday, which is when it has been rescheduled for the program.
I'm very sad. Been here since 6:30 in the morning, so yeah, I'm upset.
If we were to stay, we'd have to get a hotel, change our flights, discuss work,
In a mixed bag of emotions right now, I guess I just got to get a refund because I booked this trip in advance, right? And I booked my Airbnb months out before this happened.
I planned this months in advance. My car, my B&B, everything was months in advance. I saved a lot of money, and we got here, and we were so happy about it. And just 2 hours before it's supposed to happen, they give us an excuse that their stage wasn't finished.
Well, tonight's concert is scheduled to go ahead according to plan, and as is Wednesday's rescheduled date. So some news there for you if you are able to make it. Now, fans are already at Rogers Arena right now, either hoping to get refunds on those tickets or waiting in line to enter tonight's show, which is still hours away. And CBC reporter Joel Ballard is there right now, and he's been speaking with people in line. Hi, Joel.
Hey, Michelle. Yes, as you can see, there's lots of people already lined up to get in the concert later tonight.
Yes, I was going to say we started at the bottom and now we're here, still not at a concert. What are you hearing from people who are in line right now?
Well, you touched on it a lot. So the line behind me is people waiting to get into the show, but on the other side of me, there's another lineup. That's for the box office, and there's been a steady stream of, really disappointed concert goers lining up at the box office ever since it opened this morning, trying to figure out what this rescheduling means for their tickets.
Right.
You alluded to it earlier, and I spoke to a lot of people. The majority of people actually are from out of town to see this show, at least the ones that I've spoken to. I spoke to a pair from Vanderhoof that have been planning for this trip for 2 months,
Wow.
have spent about more than $2,000 all in to come down here, get a place to stay, see the show. And their show, of course, was canceled yesterday and was rescheduled for tomorrow. But they said, we have a life back home we have to get back to. We have jobs, we have families, we have work, and we can't stay Wednesday. So they were desperately waiting in line, seeing if they could get a ticket, have their ticket changed to tonight instead of Wednesday. And that's one of the big issues we're seeing with people, is just that they can't make that rescheduled time. So what does that mean for them? Are they going to get to see Drake? Are they going to get a refund? We just don't know at this point. Rogers Arena did say in its tweet yesterday that all tickets will be honored, but exactly what that means is unclear, because at this point Rogers Arena hasn't elaborated on that statement.
Have we heard, so we haven't heard anything at all. I know you've been trying to get to those answers yourself in terms of what people can do. Can they get refunds? You know, what are we hearing so far?
Yeah, so far, Canuck Sports and Entertainment, Rogers Arena, they've only put out that short statement on Twitter yesterday saying, hey, look, we're sorry, there was this technical issue with the new video board and we have to cancel this concert. This was hours before the concert was scheduled to start. So from that, they haven't added anything else. And, you know, couples that concert goers that I spoke with today said they've been online with the customer service and they're just on hold, or the call gets disconnected. That's why many of them are actually coming down in person to the box office to try and get something to happen.
Okay. Well, Joel, thank you very much. I appreciate you're joining us. You're going to talk to some more fans there, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are still those excited. They're behind me. They've been waiting here since 7 this morning to be the first ones into the general admission standing zone. So still lots of excitement despite what happened yesterday.
Okay.
Michelle?
Joel, thank you very much. That's CBC reporter Joel Ballard joining us from just outside Rogers Arena. And yes, in a statement, Canuck Sports and Entertainment, which manages the 19,000-seat arena in downtown Vancouver, said that, quote, unforeseen circumstances with a newly installed piece of equipment meant that the concert was pushed to Wednesday instead. And the show scheduled for tonight, Tuesday, will still go ahead. Anyone who had a ticket to the Monday show will be able to go on Wednesday. And so we want to hear from you now. Or are you someone who was in line last night only to be disappointed? What does that mean for you? Will you be able to go on Wednesday? Love to hear from you. And given that, you know, as you've heard, people have come from far and away, planned months in advance to go to this concert, what about for yourself? What would you spend? How far would you go to see your own favorite artist? I know a lot of people have been going to concerts. We talked about Taylor Swift a couple of months ago. Let us know how far you'd go to see some live entertainment and from really big stars or your favorite artists as well. 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733 and star or pound 690. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me now is Sydney Brazil, social media manager and writer for Exclaim magazine. Hi, Sydney. Nice to speak with you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, can you feel the disappointment among those fans last night?
I know, I feel so bad for them. It feels like we've been seeing a new slew of concert cancellations since COVID, and it feels like it's a lot more commonplace now, unfortunately.
Why is it that they would travel so far? You know, we heard about Vanderhoof, but I've heard Winnipeg from the United States as well. Why are people going so far to go to a concert?
Honestly, I feel like there's almost an exclusivity to it because there's so little that fans can get these days that is exclusive to the fan themselves. For example, if you want to get specific art from your artist or from your favorite band, you have to either buy a physical copy or see the show in person. So if you're not living in a place where concerts come super often, you kind of want that piece for yourself. And it's just such like an emotional attachment that people have to these artists that makes them like they will go far and wide, even to their own detriment sometimes.
To their own detriment, having to shift things. I was speaking with someone just before the show, just before noon today, and she was saying that, she is able to go, thankfully, on Wednesday, but had to reschedule some things, shift some things around. So she's one of the lucky ones, right? But so many others are from elsewhere and now perhaps have to pay more in hotel bills and Airbnbs and all of that. What does this say about that pent-up demand? You talked about post-pandemic, that pent-up demand for people to go to concerts and see live artists.
I feel like since the pandemic, I've heard more personal testimonials about people traveling to go to shows, not only if they live in a city where shows come, but they want to see and have this experience over and over again. So, for example, pardon me, sorry.
No, right.
Basically, it seems like, for example, the Eras Tour, like you were mentioning earlier, a lot of people from Canada traveled to the States to go see Taylor Swift then. And now that there's all these dates in Toronto, that they're trying to see her again there and spend similar amounts of money, not on travel per se, but on the tickets themselves.
Yes, we did hear from when we spoke about the Eras Tour, we heard from someone who had traveled hours from the Kootenays to go south to Seattle to see her perform, and not even to go into the concert, but just to wait in the parking lot and hear the music from outside and party with people out there. So there is certainly that draw, as you were saying, to see these artists and that connection with these artists themselves. We want to hear from our listeners too. If you're someone who was in line to go see Drake last night, what was that like when you learned about the cancellation and the postponement to tomorrow? And let us know too, what does this say about how willing we are, or how far we're willing to go to see our favorite artists? How far would you go? How much are you willing to spend? We know everything is more expensive now, but people have been saving up to go to Drake. How much would you be willing to spend for tickets that are not cheap, certainly? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690 as well. And you can email us to bctoday@cbc.ca is our email address. My guest is Sydney Brazil, social media manager with Exclaim magazine. Is there something about these particular huge stars like Drake and Taylor Swift, Beyonce's on tour as well? Is there something about them in particular that people would go to, a really big distances, large distances to go see? What about the argument for just sticking with watching your local favorite indie band?
Well, I think that there's something to be said about the parasocial relationships that people have with their favorite artists. It's sort of that celebrity status sort of thing where you think you know so much about a person just because you listen to their music and perhaps you connect with their lyrics, or you are a musician.
Wear their shoes.
Exactly. So when you see somebody with this amount of awe, you would do basically anything for them. Like, it's very much a continuation of maybe even fangirl culture, where people would dedicate so much of their time and effort and money to these people specifically because they feel a personal connection to this person they've never met before.
Yeah. And I know we're going to stick with you a little bit after the news update as well, Sydney, but off the top, you mentioned you've been seeing more of these cancellations. What have been the reasons? In this case, it was equipment, not due to Drake, but it was an equipment issue, and he's been seen around town, in fact, in Vancouver. But what are the reasons that you've been hearing?
So beyond technical issues, there's the obvious illness. There's a lot of people who, like, their vocal cords give out, which has always been a thing, or just that they've been feeling under the weather. And I feel like since COVID, there's been a precedent for, if you're sick, rest up and be well. You don't have to sacrifice yourself and your health for other people. That said, another thing that I sort of noticed is that there's a larger precedent for musicians to cancel tours on the basis of mental health, because touring is a very vigorous process. You're away from home, from your family, from your loved ones for months, and it could take a toll on somebody even if they don't already have pre-existing mental health issues. So I think that there's just a little bit more, I think people are just trying to take care of themselves in a way that they probably didn't before.
Yeah, what an interesting point you raise. I know I've been hearing more of that as well, cancellations for health issues. And I remember Adele talking about she just wasn't happy with the way the show was going, and that it wasn't quite ready yet when it came to her show in Las Vegas. This was a while ago now, but what an interesting point you raise about artists taking care of themselves as well. And what does that mean for fans? We'd love to hear from you. If you're a fan, if you're someone who's paid a lot of money, saved up to go to a concert, would you pay a lot of money depending on who the artist is? How far would you go? How much would you spend to see CBC Live Entertainment. And if you're someone who was going to see Drake last night and you want to share your story with us, we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and star or pound 690. We're going to hear more about that and about Drake and other artists as well, and the meaning of concerts, why they mean so much to us, coming up after this news update. As well, we're going to talk about teachers and the ongoing issue of the teacher shortage as we start the new school year coming up next week. All of that is coming up after this CBC News Update with Michelle Morton.
Good afternoon. Here are the headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. The province's chief coroner, Lisa Lapointe, says she's saddened the drug crisis is showing no signs of slowing down, as new data from the BC Coroner Service says at least 198 people lost their lives to drugs last month. It was the 13th month in a row where more than 190 people have died. Between January and July of this year, at least 1,455 people have died as a result of toxic drugs. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team has been called to mission after police announced a victim shot yesterday has died in hospital. Investigators believe the 45-year-old was targeted and the shooting is linked to the gang conflict. A short time later, a burning car was found nearby. The victim has not been identified and there's no word on arrests. Nearly 20 wildfires are burning on Vancouver Island after a thunderstorm and scattered lightning strikes overnight. The BC Wildfire Service says 16 of the 18 of the fires burning are considered out of control. Meteorologists with Environment Canada say dry conditions also played a role in the fires, and there's still more lightning in the forecast this week for Vancouver Island. In the local forecast, periods of rain with risk of a thunderstorm today, highs of 19 degrees, and tomorrow sun and clouds with highs of 20, and in the evening a chance of showers cooling down to 15. Now back to BC Today with Michelle Eliot.
Is there a concert or an artist you would fly to go see, Michelle?
That I would fly to go see? Ooh, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
Ooh, you know what? I would fly to go see Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, what? Oh, fantastic.
Yes, I love them. I love listening to their music.
I'm guessing you are not alone in that.
I have a feeling I'm not. How about yourself, Michelle?
I haven't, and I would go to Seattle. I would go, just a short drive away to go to a concert, but I don't know that I would fly. I remember having dinner somewhere and someone sitting next to me, and I think they were visiting from Japan, and they were here to see Aerosmith, and they said they had basically followed Aerosmith everywhere, just going to where they were performing next. I thought, what a life.
It's so funny. I had a girlfriend who flew to Amsterdam to go see the Rolling Stones, and then when she got there, canceled. Could you imagine?
Oh, no.
I know. And I have to add, too, to the Fleetwood and Stevie Nicks concerts. I've already seen them in concert, and I would love to see them again. So definitely willing to fly somewhere else.
There's the fangirl in Michelle coming out. I love it.
She's real. Guilty.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
That's Michelle Morton joining us from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Jen writes, I have flown to Europe more than once to see the music I like, as those artists rarely come here. There's that as well. So we've been talking about the Drake concert cancellation last night due to a problem with the stage and the screen that was just put up at Rogers Arena. And so we're trying to find out more information as to what people who were going last night can do. Apparently you can go to tomorrow's rescheduled concert, and as well tonight's concert that was already previously scheduled will go ahead. But a lot of disappointed fans last night. We heard from some of them earlier in the show, and as you heard from Joel Ballard, already a lineup outside Rogers Arena today. I've been joined here by Sydney Brazil, who's a social media manager and writer for Exclaim magazine. You've been talking a lot, Sydney, about the change in culture, the change in our relationship with these artists, that sort of a more personal feeling, more invested, and that's why they're more willing to travel perhaps farther. How is concert culture and etiquette changing?
So I feel like a lot of people are trying to make something out of what's sort of become a bad situation, because we've sort of seen post-pandemic that there's been a lack of concert etiquette. You see these kids who never got the chance to be young and naive at a show and make mistakes and learn from them, suddenly in these big venues, perhaps 19 plus venues, where they don't understand what the etiquette is about pushing or throwing things at people. So,
oh my goodness,
think,
I would hope people will just know not to do that. I know there has been this trend of people throwing things on stage.
yeah, we actually at Extreme have what we call our Yeet Beat, which is our beat for when somebody throws something on stage, and there's something at least once a week.
Oh, okay, so why is that? And how do we stop it?
I couldn't tell you why people would want to do that.
I know
I feel
Cardi
like
B had to deal with it, Adele as well.
I think that people want to connect with these artists like more than ever. I
Yeah.
think it's part of giving them a part of themselves in a way, whether they're throwing a camera on stage to take a photo or just throwing like gifts like flowers or whatever it may be. It is a way or like a desperate attempt to connect with these people, and they just don't understand that it can be very harmful. I think these people have the best of intentions 80% of the time. It's the execution that is where it fails.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So a lot to discuss there and perhaps to learn when it comes to concert culture and etiquette. But you're right. There is that personal experience. My niece actually went to go see Taylor Swift as well in Seattle, and she was very far away. There were so many people, and all her videos was just her and her friends singing because you could barely see Taylor Swift. So it really was about the experience of being there. So there's that as well. She made some good friends that day too. Sydney, thanks so much for chatting with us about this. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
That's Sydney Brazil, social media manager and writer for Exclaim magazine. And a reminder for fans of Drake, the Canucks Sports and Entertainment Company, which does manage the 19,000-seat arena, Rogers Arena in downtown Vancouver, did say that unforeseen circumstances with newly installed piece of equipment meant the concert was pushed. It'll be tomorrow, Wednesday instead. Tonight's scheduled concert for Tuesday will still go ahead. And anyone who had a ticket to the Monday show will be able to go on Wednesday. And as we mentioned, our reporter Joel Ballard is trying to find out more details about what you can do if you were scheduled to go to Monday's show. It's 12:37 now, 1:37 in the Mountain Time Zone. You're with BC Today here on CBC Radio 1, 88.1 FM in Metro Vancouver, and live streaming as well. You can catch us on the CBC Gem app, on YouTube at CBC Vancouver, and online on our website, cbc.ca/BC. I'm Michelle Eliot. Very nice to be with you this afternoon. Thanks so much for being with us. Well, in a week from now, students are returning to school in BC, but the end of the last school year showed a critical teacher shortage, putting pressure on current staff. It has been an issue that's been present in BC schools for years. And so today, ramping up to the opening of back to school, we are talking about that shortage. And when it comes to teachers and other staff as well, you can give us a call. What are your concerns about it? And what difference does having proper teaching make for you and your child? If you're a teacher yourself, we'd love to hear from you what your expectations are. If you're a parent, how have staff shortages affected you? What are your concerns about the shortages for the coming school year? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining us for this conversation is Clint Johnston, president of the BC Teachers Federation. Hello, Clint. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I am fine. Thanks so much for joining us. How long exactly has a teacher shortage been an issue in BC?
Well, I guess that depends on who you ask. But the Federation has been trying to get the attention of the public and government about the shortage of teachers for quite a few years now. As you would expect, it started off with smaller numbers, noticing that it was becoming harder in some of the rural and remote areas to get TTOCs, and then it grew and grew to the point that it is that now where it is, as you mentioned, it's a really urgent problem for education in BC.
Okay, and TTOCs, that would be teachers on call.
Yeah.
So these would be substitute teachers that people see. What was the situation like last year? What did you learn?
Well, last year, things really came to a head. We saw some very public examples of what it means. We had one district, as far as I'm aware of, who had some really urgent concerns in August about being able to open their school. the main school in their district because they did not have enough staff to staff it. And it's a district, a local that we spend a lot of time going to ourselves. So we knew this was a growing issue, but last year they were worried they were not going to be able to open the school. We saw some advertisements in places like Langley and Chilliwack in the Metro Fraser Valley for uncertified teachers. So last year, I think it became much more front of consciousness for the public that there is a real problem.
And what does that mean, uncertified teachers then?
Well, in BC, as in a lot of jurisdictions in Canada, obviously there's a training program for teachers. You have to go to university, you have to get significant education. It's about 5 years in BC for most of us and elsewhere. But then you have to get certified. And that says that you've taken the appropriate education, that you're a qualified teacher, and you're fit to be part of the public education system in British Columbia. And when there is a shortage of those certified individuals, when they can't be found or hired, there is a possibility in the School Act to hire uncertified individuals, which are governed by getting a letter of permission if they're on staff for very long.
These are people, though, who may be still studying to become teachers, just short of getting that certification?
Yeah, well, not to be hyperbolic, but depending on where you are in the province, they can be a wide range of things. Certainly some of them may be individuals on their way to a teacher education, but considering that for most people getting teacher training is a pretty full time, that's actually more rare. What you more often see is people who might have another 4-year degree. You'll see some people who have a bit of post-secondary education, but honestly, in some cases, you have individuals who have a high school education and are available.
And I know this is an issue right now that's playing out in Quebec, where they're short more than 8,000 teachers, and they are looking at what they're calling not legally qualified individuals who may not have those teaching certificates or degrees to fill those classrooms. So what are some of the challenges you're expecting for this coming school year then?
Well, I think they're similar to what we had last year. We know we've been speaking with the ministry and the other groups involved in education, and there are some places where they are again concerned that they're not going to have an adequate staff to run their schools or their district properly. We know that's already happening. We know that there are more calls out, more hiring of uncertified individuals happening across the province. So it's going to be more of the same. I think it's important to note, though, that what the public sees of this, what parents and students, what they will see of it is less services, is a loss of services. And that's really how it comes through. And that's why it's such a concern. Because a lot of the time, when you have a shortage of staff, what we call the non-enrolling specialists, people who really support learners in special areas, they're pulled to cover classrooms, and that means that the students don't get the services that they need and deserve.
Okay, let's take a call now as we ask you, what are your concerns when it comes to the teacher shortage that has been an ongoing issue in BC, as playing out right now, coming to a head in Quebec, where they are short more than 8,000 teachers. How concerned are you? If you're a parent, if you're a teacher yourself, what impact has a teachers or staff shortage had on the education that you see in schools? And what are your concerns for the coming school year? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, and star or pound 690. Sandy joins me now from Vancouver. Hi, Sandy.
Well, thanks so much. Of course, this is a vital topic all year round, but especially as the school year begins. There was an editorial on this topic in the Globe and Mail today.
That's right.
That was so nearsighted, because all they talked about was poor planning by governments in terms of the cycle of student population and the accompanying number of teachers required as the population goes up and down. But really, they didn't talk at all about what it means to be a teacher, how hard it is. I mean, it's valuable work. I'm a teacher. It's the most important work because you're working with the next generation. So to me, it's the most important job. But you have to have supports for those students, supports for those teachers, and governments are falling down in that regard, not having enough additional people in. The more adults in the school, the higher the ratio of student and adult, the better it is for the kids. And in Quebec, they've been so short-sighted in terms of eliminating anyone that wears a kippah or a hijab. You can't have a public sector job. So there's a whole bunch of people there that can't teach, and that was unfortunate. And in BC, I mean, who wants to be a teacher anymore? You get slammed by all folks everywhere, except the parents and those that work with the kids who really understand how much teachers give.
Okay.
But it's a thankless job. And if I was advising a young person today, given the tenor of the times, and you're being asked to do more and more with less and less, I still maintain it's an exceptionally important job. But, you know, it's a really tough job.
Wow.
And here in the Lower Mainland, where can you find to live? So it's tough. I'd like to see more positive comments about how we value our teachers. That would make a huge difference to people's morale. But instead of getting, they get their summers off and all this business, teachers are taking courses and doing all kinds of things. I'm tired of teachers being shot down. Who wants to? So if you're getting shot down, who wants a profession like that?
Sandy, you've touched on so many things. Can I just ask for some more specifics from you, because you said, you're slammed by so many people.
You are. Anytime you ask for a pay raise, they get too much. They make too much money. They have their summers off. You know the lines. I'm 60 years old. I've heard them my whole life. And we need more people in the classroom. We're being asked to do more with less. And also, let's talk about violence in the classrooms. I don't blame the kids. The kids are under a lot of pressure. Families are breaking down, right? I mean, things are changing rapidly. They see these public figures slamming each other on Twitter, like, I'm sorry, Polyev and others. They all want to,
So you're talking,
what kind of role models do we have? And the kids are online and they absorb all of that.
Okay, so it's
and then they beat up on each other and they beat up on teachers.
You've gotten,
what's going on
Sandy,
in Ontario.
It really sounds like there's been a lot that's been weighing on you as a teacher, right? Is this something that's going to affect you?
But I'm
will you stay?
For a lot of teachers here.
Yeah, will you stay?
A tough job.
Will you stay in the job?
It's not a safe job anymore.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's important. Because when you're with a child and you can unlock a little piece of them to get excited about who they are and how they feel about themselves and help them to build friendships with others and get excited about learning, you are educating and nurturing the next generation.
And Sandy, but you're returning. You're returning to the classroom this year, eh?
Sorry?
Are you returning to the classroom this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Proudly.
Okay.
But it's tough. Don't think for a minute that it isn't. And anyone who gives teachers a hard time, I say, come and spend time. Spend a few days doing this very important work, and you'll see.
I can hear all of that. The pride you have in the job, but also how distraught you have been at the weight of the job. Thank you very much for the call, Sandy from Vancouver. And we have a statement, this is from last year, from a spokesperson with the Ministry of Education and Childcare, talking about teacher shortages. And the statement said, "We know that some long-standing pressures remain, filling positions in rural and remote areas, as well as for those substitute or on-call teachers and specialist roles." And they say that problem, is still relevant now. So that was a comment from the Ministry of Education last year on this issue. And we are talking about a shortage of teachers as an ongoing issue in BC. It is coming to a head in Quebec. Asking you, what have been your concerns? How have you been impacted by a staff shortage at schools in British Columbia? What are your concerns, and how can we address it for this coming year as well? We'd love to hear some solutions too. We just heard from a teacher as well calling us from Vancouver. What are some solutions you can see? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, star or pound 690. My guest is Clint Johnson, president of the BC Teachers Federation. And before I go back to Clint, let's take another call here. Sarah is on the line in Vancouver. Hi, Sarah. Good afternoon.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Of course, this is very, very concerning. Our children are in school for 13 years for most of their better years and their most important years that they're shaping their lives. And I feel like teachers are just not paid enough. I met a server at White Spot the other day, very, very bright young woman who was a teacher, and she said she actually opted out to stay as a server because it pays better at White Spot than to become a teacher in an elementary school. That was a very huge shock and a very, very sad comment for me to hear. I have a 4-year-old who's going to go to kindergarten next year, and it's very, very concerning that somebody working at White Spot is getting paid more than the teachers who are going to be spending 13 years with my kids. I feel like that's the biggest problem that we have. Teachers are not just getting paid enough.
Okay, you have a lot of empathy for teachers, Sarah. And what about for your child or your children? What has a shortage meant for you?
Well, like I said, my son is still in grade 4. He's 4 years old. I've never been on the radio. And I have a stepdaughter who's 16. I don't feel like we have felt a shortage, but I know that classrooms are quite crowded, so that probably is a function of the shortage that we have.
Okay. How do you feel then? I mean, your son is going to go into the school system.
That's correct, and it is very concerning because, like your previous caller Sandy was saying, if the teachers are not content in their lives, then that's going to kind of propagate into our children, and vice versa. Our children's problems are going to make their problems worse. So the environment of school, which is supposed to be a very safe and nurturing environment, is not becoming that anymore.
Okay.
And I feel like teachers' happiness is a very, very big deal, and it should be a big deal to all parents.
Sarah, thank you so much for the call. Take care.
Thank you.
That's Sarah in Vancouver. Let's head to Victoria now. And Greg is joining us there with a comment about teachers and staff shortages at schools. Hi, Greg.
Hi there. Yeah, I can't help but agree with the previous callers that teachers are basically being, we're treated like garbage. We have been for 40 years. I taught 40 years ago. I moved from Saskatchewan to British Columbia. I taught for 1 year because it was clearly a financial dead-end street for me, making $26,000 a year. And I was working at the keg at night to supplement my income and being able to afford to live in Vancouver then. Imagine now. So all of my friends were in the corporate world. They said, you'll get hired. They profile you, apply. I ended up at Xerox. I made $100,000 a year the first year.
Okay.
And it continued to get better after that, and I've never looked back. But as a 7-year-old, I said I wanted to be an educator. And it was terrible. We've never been respected. My friends who taught for 40 years said, you're so lucky you didn't pursue this career and stay there.
What was it that made you feel disrespected?
You were always, that in 1980, you're monitored by parents who don't like the way you teach. I was teaching creative writing. I took my students out of the classroom, and I was criticized for that.
Okay.
There was so many incidents like that, and not that my principal didn't support me, but I didn't get the support I needed for $26,000 a year, and I wasn't going to be scrutinized by parents who knew nothing about the education process.
Okay. And so, Greg, you've gone into the corporate world. And so just bringing this back to our topic of the teacher shortage, I mean, that's some of the things that you're saying, perhaps, that's what's pushed you out of this profession.
Well, I went back 10 years later, and I was interviewed by somebody at the Vancouver Public School Board, and she said, you're not qualified anymore. We would be interested in as a substitute.
And how long had you been away? 10 years?
Pardon me?
You've been away for 10 years.
I've been away for 10 years, and I was in between corporate positions, and I thought, you know what? I'll go back to the classroom and see what it's like now, and I'll do it on a temporary basis, and I was not even considered.
Okay.
And I just looked at her and I said, well, there's a problem here when somebody who has 5 years of education and 2 degrees gets told they can't teach anymore.
So the challenge there, you left due to pay, and as you were saying, what you saw as disrespect for your work, but also trying to get requalified was the challenge. Greg, thank you so much for the call from Victoria. Jan writes, I'm a retired public school teacher. Number one, teachers need to be paid better. And teachers need more support in their classrooms. Okay, thank you very much, Jan. I just read a little bit of your email there. Now, there was a new tentative agreement signed last year, was there not, Clint? And, how far does that go to address the concerns that we've heard about salaries?
Well, it's a great question, and I really appreciate your callers, and that is a key piece for everyone. The agreement certainly did a lot to move us forward in BC. We've lingered at the bottom of kind of the pay scale for teachers in Canada for a long, long time. So that increase does definitely get us up towards the top of that scale again. But I think what's important to note about that is you're looking at decades of raises that didn't even keep up with inflation, a lot of zeros, a lot of ones. So when you look at that last year, and the contract certainly helps, it's going to bump us up. But when you're looking at how do we get back to a point where you can afford to live, where you can catch up with that loss in the cost of living power, we still have a long way to go. And I don't think anybody would question, we live in one of the most expensive jurisdictions in the world, if you're in the Metro Vancouver area, but housing affordability and availability is a problem everywhere in the province. We can get a bit metro-centric about it, but it is a problem everywhere, the availability and the affordability. And that impacts, teachers just like everybody else. And it makes it difficult to get them to go to different parts of the province at times. So pay is certainly an issue. We've never pretended it isn't. You look at the overall investment in education as a percent of GDP, that's been dropping steadily as well. So there's a lot of financial considerations. But I do really appreciate some of the things Sandy was mentioning at the beginning, because you can pay someone really well, and that is important. We need to make sure that's done. But if the workload and the job isn't tenable, if you can't manage to do that for 30, 35 years as a career, you're still not going to keep people in the system. You'll get people in, but you won't keep them.
Okay,
so there's really fundamental work to be done there as well.
The retention issue. I have just a minute left, Clint. What's one solution you can put forward as we head into the school year?
Well, I think the main solution that needs to be looked at is to improve those working conditions. And the reality is a lot of that takes place at the bargaining table. We also would like to see the government put some funding, some money into other programs like loan forgivenesses, some incentives to get people to different parts of the province. But you incentivize them to come in, you have to put the work in, make sure that the working conditions in their contract mean they'll stay.
Clint, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Appreciate it.
You take care. Clint Johnson is president of the BC Teachers Federation. Scott writes as an email, can you also point out the shortage of support staff, the education assistants that are essential to supporting students and teachers? These staff make significantly less than teachers, and there's been a years-long shortage that isn't being addressed. And just about a minute before the end of the show today, we do want to give you an update. As of 12:25 this afternoon, this is a travel update from Transportation or Drive BC about Highway 97. It is closed in both directions north of Summerland due to a rock slide. And so Drive BC says the road is closed as they wait for an assessment with the next update that is going to come at around 4 p.m. this afternoon. So once again, Highway 97 closed in both directions north of Summerland. That's it for our show today. Thanks so much to everyone who called in and joined our discussion. You can always email us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. You can listen to the show again on the CBC Listen app. You can watch us on demand on CBC Vancouver on YouTube. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thank you for listening and watching to BC Today. Have a great afternoon.